Welcome to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcasts.
In this podcast, we'll explore options for the EU to forge new partnerships in a polarised world, one of the 15 risks and challenges identified and analysed by the EPRS in their Future Shocks 2023 report. Want to know more? Stay with us.
We are living in an increasingly polarised world, one in which the multilateral rules-based order is being challenged and global alliances are redefined.
Russia's war on Ukraine, combined with rising tensions between the US and China, and the emergence of countries from the so-called Global South as important world players, open both new challenges and opportunities for the EU.
The external challenges are manifold, starting with Russia's war on Ukraine and its implications for European security, but also the partnership between China and Russia, their common antagonism with the West, and confrontation with the United States.
A traditional ally upon which, as we saw under Trump's presidency and most recently over the trade dispute over green subsidies, the EU cannot fully rely on.
And the challenges are not only geostrategic, they're also economic. By 2050, 4 of the 5 largest economies, China, India, Indonesia and Brazil, will come from the Global South, while the EU's economic weight and share of the world population will shrink.
By 2050, Asia will account for half of the global economic output, and by the end of the century, more than 8 in 10 people will live in Asia or Africa, which means that the EU will have to deal with an increasingly self-confident and influential Global South. Hence
the urgency, also underlined by the European Parliament, for the EU to step up efforts to engage with key countries from the Global South and forge new alliances to advance its goals.
But the Global South is not a homogeneous group, rather a very diverse group with huge differences in conditions, aspirations and alignments. So there is no one-size-fits-all strategy to engage with them.
That's why the EU combines some umbrella frameworks, such as the Common Foreign and Security Policy, the Global Strategy or the Strategic Compass, with more tailored regional strategies, and partnerships with countries from Africa, Asia or Latin America, a region the EU has a special interest in.
Together, the EU and CELAC represent 60 countries, 1 billion people, and almost 1/3 of the UN. When acting together, for example, in the fight against climate change, they can be powerful actors defending multilateralism and international law.
And let's not forget that the EU is the world's biggest donor of development assistance, the first trading partner and the first foreign investor for many countries in the world.
That's right. And since 2021, the new Global Europe instrument, with a budget of nearly 80 billion euros, covers EU cooperation with all third countries to help them overcome long-term developmental challenges and promote sustainable development, peace and stability.
So, there's a clear set of responses being implemented at EU level to deal with this increasingly polarised world. But how complex will this prove to be?
Well, a concrete example of how complex the shaping of relations with the Global South can be is the EU's attempt to strengthen its relations with Brazil, a member of G20, BRICS, Mercosur, and a key state in Latin America given its territory, population and GDP. Let's hear Mark Jutten from EPRS.
The agreement between the European Union and Mercosur has the potential to lift up the relations between the two partners to the next level. It could not only strengthen the political ties, but also lead to a significant increase in trade and investment. Hopefully both sides manage to sort out the remaining concerns regarding environmental protection and human rights. The political leaders participating at the EU Latin America Summit in July in Brussels were optimistic to come to an agreement by the end of this year.
One obstacle to the development of new partnerships in the South is, for example, the anti-EU rhetoric fueled especially by Russia and China, portraying EU programs and offers as neo-colonial and serving EU interests only, and the EU's action to rally support for Ukraine as a double standard, contrasting with an alleged lack of EU engagement in the conflicts of the South.
So how can the EU respond to this?
Well, first of all, there's a listening and understanding exercise to be done, without falling into self-flagellation. The EU needs to understand the positions of these countries and their perception of EU policies, however diverse they are, and to clarify the terms and content of the different partnerships.
And that means confronting the legacy of the past, including colonialism and historic ties, and tackling in a frank way the irritants in the relations between these countries and the EU, like the rejection by some of these countries of the universal character of human rights, the slow finalization of bilateral or regional agreements, accusations of double standards, or green protectionism.
The EU should also promote its positive agenda with these countries. But how? Here's Myriam Guanard from the Parliament's External Policies DG.
Indeed, it's important for the EU to be clear about its offer to different countries, for example, in the areas of climate policies, green and digital transitions, or international cooperation, but also to develop new types of partnerships with countries of the Global South. The EU also needs to boost communication on the ground and public diplomacy with partner countries to debunk false claims and address misrepresentations.
An example of the new offer of the EU is the Global Gateway Initiative in partnership with beneficiary countries to boost smart, clean and secure digital, energy and transport links with these countries and strengthen health, education and research systems across the world.
And not least to propose an alternative, value-based project to China's Belt and Road Initiative in countries of the Global South.
For a more detailed analysis, check out Myriam Guanard and Mark Uton's full chapter on new partnerships in a polarized world as part of the EPRS Future Shocks 2023 study.
This is a European Parliamentary Research Service podcast.
Thanks for listening.